Hello there, my name is David Bradley. This is From the Mind of a Mystic / Schizophreniforms. Today, as you can see from the title below, this video is about humbling yourself before God and prayer as a way of being. I realise that's an explicitly sort of Christian theme, and if it doesn't interest you, I mean, it obviously does because you've clicked the video, but I don't intend any offence. I don't intend to preach. I tend to be as sincere and inclusive as possible and give alternate ways of conceptualizing the techniques and the methodology of what I'm saying, hopefully throughout the video. And yeah, well, the only thing to say just before this introduction is to like and subscribe for more content. So if you do enjoy this, like, subscribe, share it with someone that finds it of value, and yeah, we're basically just going to dive in. So to preface this video, I'm going to start by mentioning, as you may have guessed from the schizophreniforms bit, and if you read the About section in the Mind of the Mystic, depending on which channel you're watching this on, I'm diagnosed with schizophrenia. And a lot of my religious experiences, and not necessarily my beliefs, but my religious experiences, kind of are in fact that condition. That is why I'm diagnosed with schizophrenia, because I have very vivid, visions. One of the most recent ones being a giant tentacled eyeball floating above me in the room, lashing at me, and I described this in a previous video on the Schizophreniform channel. I managed to visualize into that space and damage that creature enough that it left and it stopped. And then I googled this afterwards and was like, these are literally biblically accurate, like, creatures. Like, whoa, yeah. Giant eyeball with more eyeballs, and it's got tentacles, and it's just flying around, and it's a really intense creature. I tried to dialogue with it, but that just gives you the gist of sort of experiences I have. Now, this is potentially going to be quite a painful video for me to make because of that. So, like, I've been humiliated so many times, explicitly and deliberately, by people for my belief system and my quite expansive thought on this subject. I've been laughed at, I've been denied, I've been told that it's nonsense, I've been told I'm insane, I've been ridiculed, and even the reason I initially got sectioned with psychosis was because of having religious experiences. And whilst I think that was ultimately of a benefit to me, it did feel like a form, and it still does to this day, the fact that I can be locked up for my religious beliefs. I find that threatening, I find that discriminative, but it depends how you act based on those beliefs, and I've never been sectioned again. That was 18 years ago, so we'll see. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that, I hope that if you do comment on this video, which I would encourage you to, and give me your opinion and feedback, that you treat me with some level of dignity, no disdain. These are deeply powerful thoughts for me, and this video is actually for me. Like, I'm making this as a sort of record of what I feel, think, and know about this. And I'm not telling you that you should believe this. I'm not telling you that this is the way it is. I'm telling you what I believe, and I'm going to be careful with my language and try to retain that conceptually, that, like, I'm not telling you this is how it is. I'm like, this is what I experience, this is what I think, this is what I understand. And it's up to you what you do with that information. It's up to you how you think about it. But it's time for me to sort of speak honestly and freely about what I believe and how I integrate that as part of my spiritual journey. And I hope you can take anything of value from this. As you do, hit me in the comments. So we're going to dive into the first section. That was the preface and the introduction. First section is prayer as a way of being. So in section 1 here, prayer as a way of being, I'm going to talk about multiple factors, and the starting one is, what is prayer? Like, to me, like, how do I conceptualize the concept of prayer? Everyone's heard of prayer. You think to a man in the sky, tell him what you want, you do some Hail Marys, and then you get that thing. and that's the gist, right? Whereas to me, there's a lot to unpack here. Prayer is a technique whereby you turn inwards to a force, and this can be an impersonal force or a personal force, but the idea is to you turn your focus inwards in quiet reflection, and we'll get to what I think God is in a bit, but you turn yourself towards something greater than yourself. So something beyond you, and the sphere at which you conceptualize that as. It could be the universe for some people, it could be the planet for others, it could be the city, it could be your church, it could be anything, it could be just however your level of conceptualization of what that greater force than you is, like it's a thing. And what we're doing in prayer is contacting and communicating, sometimes with response, but we'll get to that later, with a force greater than yourself, and petitioning to it in this very humble way. Say, I can't do this by myself, and we'll come more to that later on. How it can help you is the next section I've written now. It can help you because not only can you find a way to get to a sincerer core of yourself, it takes great humility to pray with any sincerity. You have to be willing to go, all right, even if this thing I'm praying to is just me, at some other more zoomed out version of myself, or more expansive version of myself, or more the totality of my being that is working in the substrata of my subconscious, working whatever whatever that is, being able to take from a conscious perspective and commune with that teaches you something about your values. It teaches you something about what do you need. It, like for me in prayer as well, there's this sense that thing, however expansive or diminutive it is, that you're putting your life in the hands of something more powerful than you, and that communication with that thing, even if it's just in your imagination, the communication with that thing is healing inherently, for starters. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is that you can enact change in the exterior world. You can manifest and actualize massive changes in your life simply through doing prayer. So you whether you believe it's God, whether you believe it's higher self, whether you believe it's whatever, like the act of prayer can massively transform your life, basically. So that's two ways in which it can help. It can give you interior knowledge. It can give you solace and comfort. It can be a voice, something to talk to that loves you, and it can enact transformation in the exterior world without needing any direct action necessarily, other than the actual prayer. Now you then need to be able to actualize on the opportunities that arise as a consequence of that. Like it's not enough to say I want cheesy snacks, which we'll come back to later because that's an irrelevant thing. You need to then actualize on the fact that cheesy snacks, as this cheesy cliche thing, would bring you that happiness and joy that you deserve, or that you feel you may deserve. You then have to actualize on acquiring that thing when the opportunity presents itself to you. So that's the other aspect of it. It's not just simple wish for things and then they manifest. Like wish in one hand, crap in the other. We see which one fills up first. Prayer is more like a turbo version of this wishing. Like wishing is saying, I want this to satisfy my needs. Prayer is something, we'll come into this later, but prayer is something entirely different from that. That you're going down into the deepest part of yourself with this incredible humility, and we'll come back to that later. And then you're looking to this carer force, this greater entity than yourself, to provide what you really need, not just what you want, not what you think you want, what you desire. It's not sorcery. It's not. You're You're not going, I want that, give it to me now through the law of attraction. I shall have everything my heart desires. It's far more humble than that. And the next thing is, how has it helped me? It has helped me enormously in the ways I just mentioned. So in terms of interior knowledge, like self-reflective knowledge of like, what is at the very, very core of my being? What do I really want? It's not like you at a beauty pageant where you're just like, I just want world peace. And so you may want that, you may sincerely want that, but what do you need strength for? What is your problem that is there that you are unable to overcome without a gentle nudge of assistance from the energy of the universe? But we'll come more into that. And like it's helped. So there's this introspective qualia of it that gives you this deeper self-knowledge about the fundamental nature of your own psyche. And it does that because you have to be incredibly honest for this to work. You can't lie to yourself. And in that way, the next question is, how can prayer improve your life? It can improve your life by giving you interior knowledge and giving you the ability to reflect on who you truly are, what you truly want, what you truly need, where you're failing and where you're succeeding, where you can do stuff by yourself and actualize on the opportunities arisen to you, presented to you, and where you've really messed up and you need to be able to acknowledge that. And we'll come back to that later. Do I need to believe in God for it to be useful? As prefaced earlier, like, not really. Like, it's some deeper capacity of yourself. Now, I happen to believe that we'll come to what do I mean by God in the next section. I happen to believe that is intimately linked. If not God itself is that force, it's like that force in you is an abstract representation of the external force that is God. But that's not a required belief for this system to be beneficial. Like, the act of prayer itself and submission to some higher force, whether that just be just a deeper part of your own consciousness, like that act will elicit change. It will have results if you do it correctly. If you do it the way I describe it, especially in my experience, it's almost guaranteed. Almost guaranteed. And then the final thing to say here is about prayer as a way of being for this first section is, in a nutshell, the goal is to get to the point where like every thought is a spell, where prayer becomes, what I've written here, becomes a modality of thinking. It's like a way to be. It's not an activity you're like, right now I'm going to sit down and pray to God. It becomes the all-encompassing nature and the modality of thinking whereby you think into being manifestation of things. That sounds really trite and cliche, but it becomes rather than something you engage in and then come back from and then see the results and measure scientifically, it becomes that flux back and forth becomes so rapid that it becomes the totality of your cognition at that level of thinking. So the ultimate goal is to get to the point where you pray as though you breathe. Like you can manually control your breath, but you also just breathe. Like you just breathe and you breathe until the day you die. So now I'm going to move on to the next section now. I hope that wasn't too much. The next section is, what do I mean by God? So I've discussed in a previous video, what do I mean by God? I've discussed in my video, reality is a hallucination, I believe it's called. I can't remember off the top of my head. But one of the last video I made, there was a 2-part series. I discussed this quite in depth, but not fully. My thinking, I'll just use what I've written here and then I'll unpack it for you. God is a concentric, interlinked, ever-expanding union of consciousness, or consciousnesses. So for example, in isolation, alone, you are different. You are ultimately a single creature with a single mind to some degree, with your own internal workings. You have your own internal monologue and dialogue and all these kind of structures. When another person comes into the sphere of your consciousness, that reliably changes the nature of your experience to an externally focused one to some degree. Like, and there's a unity there between, so what is one consciousness on their own, another consciousness on their own, and they come together and they form a kind of bridged, amalgamatory consciousness that is unified in some way, or in conflict, but like it creates almost like a third character is developed between the unity of those two characters. And that this just keeps going. Like this is in my telepathy thought broadcasting and or confirmation bias video. Like that concentric growth of unified, like a hive mind, just goes up and 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 up, and goes out and out and out and out and out and out and out. As this is what I believe and this is what I'm referring to when I'm talking about God, is that it's like it's almost like a Hindu pantheon. So with Brahma being the ultimate consciousness, and then the Trimurti, and then it just goes down and 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 down. Totals all the way down. Why not? And so further to that, deity or God is also, because of that unification of a concentrically expanding field of consciousness, it's an energy system that is connected to a very specific way of being. Like it's something you can connect with, like, and this is in my experience, it comes in through the top of my head and I can bring it down and expand it out. And I've done channeling, I've done all these surreal activities in connection with that, and I've made people weep for doing that. Tears of just deep, beautiful, existential relief and happiness. And partly that is me. It's coming through me. But it's my experience of it is also that it is coming down through me. It's not just me speaking in those moments. Sometimes it's some deeper faculty of my consciousness, and that you can connect with that, and you can bring that energy down and out into reality and embody it. And part of the way you can do that is through this alignment with an ever, like the Atman, like an ever more purified reflection in the mirror of the light of God, like the moon to the sun. Like you can become such a, if you're careful and humble practice, you can get to the point where you at least feel like at certain moments in your life there's this, you can feel that you're reflecting back God's light. You're the mirror on which the light of God can be reflected, and that's done through a purity of intention. And we'll come to what that is in the next section. I've also written a bunch of other stuff here. So like that God is perhaps the ultimate word or thought form of the cosmos, or even just the planet, or even whatever level you do that. Like you get these deep states of bliss when you connect with God. This deep serenity, this deep, it's not like, oh, I'm so pious. It's like, no, this like soul-wrenchingly, heart-filling, new state of being, and that accompanied with that is this massive change in the nature of your own experience. And it's as though you've been visited by somehow, or inhabited by the thoughts or the words or the consciousness itself of some greater expansive being. Like here I was going to mention something else that I saw in a speech, but I think I've changed my mind. But it's basically the love. The other thing is that the unification. This isn't my quote. Let's cut to the clip, actually.
To that, you cast your attention upon it, and you prioritize it, and God imposes a benevolent order upon that chaotic possibility, extracts from that chaotic possibility the habitable order that is good. And the reason that the habitable order that's extracted is good is because God uses the logos, which is something like a combination of orientation towards the highest possible good, which you could think of as love, and truth. And one way of characterizing the imitatable manifestation of the logos is that it's the nexus of love and truth.
So we're back from the clip. Love and truth are the unification of compassion and sincerity and the logos, and this idea that Love and truth are the true fundamental qualities of this energy form. Love. This is just overriding, overwhelming, incredible, heartbreaking force of love in the universe. And that it's, that again, with the purification of intention, like, truth is a virtue required. You cannot lie your way to heaven or into the grace of God. You can, and we'll come to that in the next section. God can also be considered the force of creation, biocentric, ever expanding since the Big Bang. The unending, expanding algorithm of the unfolding communicative narrative nature of the universe, of which you can tap into and communicate with. It's the flow of fate. It's the mind that we confront at the end of our lives, whether you believe there's an afterlife or not. Like, we go through the life review, it's the being there with us that's going, you didn't do that right, you did that right, let's weigh your heart versus this feather. Let's let your own conscience decide, were you everything you could have been as best you could? Are you worthy? That being is that. And ultimately, our own conscience, so like I'm mentioning conscience there, sort of, like our conscience is the droplet, the Geiger counter, the vibrating mercury, helping us gauge, like, with all sincerity, it's the thing that helps us gauge, are we right? Or is this who we are? Is that, am I everything that I could be? So yeah, that's a lot of things before we move on. God, I sound preachy. But yeah, do the work. Like, accept that you're not on the path you could be is what the first thing I've written for this section. So preachy. I hate the feeling of embarrassment I get from doing this, but everything I'm saying is sincere. I just want to start with pointing that out. Accept that you're not on the path you could be. It is almost impossible in isolation for you to be anything near the upper limits of your infinite potential. And part of this is that if you deny the existence of your own failings, if you can't bear the weight of your own conscience and your failings and your infinite potential, you can't learn from them. If you're like, no, that was fine, because, like, the harming someone, like, so you hit someone, you did something wrong, you lost control, you acted in a way that was unacceptable in that context. And if you deny that, if you keep a block in place preventing you from acknowledging that was wrong to you by your own moral ethics, like, you cannot learn from that mistake. It's impossible to learn from that mistake. And the key to this, and actually one of the most powerful conceptual tools for healing is, and the most powerful tool that Christianity seems to have discovered or annexed from wherever they got it from, is this concept of forgiveness. And that came in the New Testament. That was brought in the later part of the Bible, this concept that you can be redeemed, you can be saved, you can be forgiven. Like, the only way to the kingdom of God is through me. Like, and it's like as though that this is what you were saying in the previous section, that something outside of yourself must be submitted to, and then petitioned almost. You need to question, where did you go wrong? What are you continuing to do that is wrong? And then ask this higher capacity for forgiveness, and be willing to accept that forgiveness when it comes. And that, I had a very powerful moment that I don't have time to go into today, but hearing a voice in my head saying, you have been forgiven, was what broke those 6 years of hell. And it took me another 6 months to a year to even let that sink in, this powerful, resonating, overwhelming voice of, like, you have been forgiven. A very personal one that happened in recent times was a deep, powerful, resonating voice in the fibre of my being said, that was just a test. You've passed. You can rest now. You've owned your place. It was a test and you passed, and it was one of the more beautiful experiences I've ever had as a consequence of being schizophrenic, like as a religious experience, that was one of the most powerful things that has happened to me in a long time. All of this was a test. You've passed. You can rest. Now, part of that, like I was saying previously, is being prepared to accept help on this dangerous path ahead, and redemption in grace. Being willing to do the work. Being willing to. This is a thing I'm quoting from someone else, but being let that which is unworthy be burned in the fires. Like, set your goal upwards, and then be willing to sacrifice that which is not worthy of that highest ideal. Like, let that ideal, that over the totality of the being, the God, the highest state, let that guide you forward through this like tricky and treacherous path of temptation and darkness, and you got to do the work. Basically, you got to strip away to some degree all those things that you've justified, and you've got to bear the weight of your own conscience. You've got to bear the weight of your own soul. So for the final section, I'm going to say that the journey is never done. Each cycle of the process that I'm describing, with this deep, visceral prayer and evolutionary process that happens as a consequence of complete honesty in the face of something, some capacity of yourself, or the external world, or the personal, or the impersonal God, or whatever, however it is, there has to be one being in the world that you can bear through love and through truth. You can bear to be real with. That's the important thing. And like with each stage, you're cleansed by fire. You go down to the pit. You burn away all this agonizing lies. You go through the humiliation of acknowledging that you're a bad person at some level. You're purified by that hatred and the burning, horrible emotion that comes up when you finally acknowledge you're a bit of a dick. You're even potentially a malevolent, horrible person, and you've just been telling yourself this whole way through that you're not, and you burn that off, and then you find a trajectory, a motion, a path, and this, as you align with it over time, you're purified by that intention, the willingness to no longer act however you want, and to choose permanently to be doing the right thing. That purifies you, because every time you're living up to that moral code, you're teaching yourself that you have integrity, that you're not a monster, that you can do the right thing, that you choose to be better every time, every single day. And you get to the pinnacle of the maximum you can do there, and then you realize it drops out, and then you start again, and the cycle, it's a cycle, and it begins again. And at the end of this period of evolution, you have to take stock of what you've achieved through this process. You got to give thanks to that entity that you've been petitioning and working with and guiding through the universe, if needs be, your own conscience, whatever it is. You need to acknowledge that thing has guided you, and give thanks to it. Like, say thank you. Say thank you to the universe. Like, you talk about gratitude exercises all the time. Be grateful that you have a conscience at all. Some people don't. And then praise that, and be honest, and tell people, these things that I did, like, pay it forward. These things I did metrically purified my existence. Like, and you have to find some self-acceptance at each level of this process. And it's a religious theme. Like, if you've been saved, let's say, by something, or like say you're in a fire in your house and the firefighters came out, you're not going to deny the fact that the firefighter helped you. You're gonna tell people, oh, this amazing hero came in and saved my life. It was magical, and it saved me. And you would demonstrate your gratefulness by proliferating that information, not in an arrogant way, not in a, as I said here, stay humble. Being in the grace of God, if you even dare have the arrogance to say that, that's not something you can brag about. That's a gift from something else, and it's not you did the work. You can be consciously thankful and grateful to yourself, but you need, it's a gift, and you have to be humble enough and sincere enough and look low enough and hurt enough, be willing to suffer enough to become cleansed by that process. So you're doing the work, but to assume that the entire existence of the whole unfolding, unending algorithm of the universe hasn't helped in some way is preposterous, for starters, and second, it would be insincere. I don't know if I covered everything I want to. I'll see what happens in post-production. Thank you for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to help me grow this channel, and perhaps even to show others that they're not alone in if they think the way I do, and maybe this is useful to you. I don't know, I almost don't really care, because it meant a lot to me, and I know it was important to me to say this. So thank you for watching.